Well, hi, everybody. Gary Sinclair. Hope you had a great Easter. Many years ago now, I was driving overnight with some college friends to be part of a university-sponsored spring break bike trip from Pensacola to Tallahassee, Florida. We were sharing the driving that evening, so at one point in the middle of the night, I was awake, making sure the driver stayed alert with some good conversation. However, we soon came upon a car 30 or 40 feet from the side of the road with steam and smoke rising up from a couple of places on the car. The darkness and haze limited our view and kind of only added to our nervousness about what happened and who might be inside. Well, we stopped nonetheless, and all of us, suddenly very alert, adrenaline high rate for sure, we ran towards the eerie scene, expecting the worst. I remember my heart was racing, and I was saying a quick prayer as we approached this battered vehicle. You know, being a first responder isn't easy for sure. The feeling is one I hope to face infrequently at best, but I dreaded looking into that car and seeing something I'd probably never forget. Well, thankfully, either someone had been there first or the occupants were okay enough to flag down a ride and somebody took them from the accident to a safer place. Don't know, but I was sure glad it wasn't as bad as we thought. However, you know what? Life also has some anxiety-filled moments when there's been an accident. Perhaps not a physical one, but emotional, relational, spiritual, etc. And we're needed as one of the first on the scene. And sometimes we likely don't feel prepared or qualified, do we? Nonetheless, there are things we can do and shouldn't do to keep our efforts as effective and meaningful and appreciated as possible, especially when the situation seems critical. Of course, while every situation requires a variety of responses, let me, from some experience, training, and yes, mistakes, suggest a few basics to employ early on, no matter who you're caring for. First of all, listen, don't lecture. If someone were in a car accident, the last thing they need is us berating them for their poor driving skills. In these situations, then, listening sends the message that we want to understand, that we value their side of the story, and that we care most at the time about how they're doing, not what they should have done. If the problem is all or in part their fault, then they already know that. Another way to say it is pray, but don't preach. Quoting scripture has its place, but throwing out a verse right then can also be a form of lecture, not love. Another thing is share concern, not comparison. It's tempting right away to want to comfort them by telling a positive, optimistic story of our own or someone else's. However, no two stories are the same, and early on, most people aren't ready to hear even something positive that's much farther down the road. See, we need to also be careful not to unintentionally outdo their challenges, which can send the message that their struggle isn't that big of a deal. Instead, our initial goal should be to understand what they feel. Let them know that their emotions are normal and okay. And on a related note, make understanding more important than umpiring. When we hear someone's story, especially when they're struggling with conflict, mistreatment, relationships, deterioration, and other issues with two views, we can get sucked into taking sides and playing the judge, or, as my point suggests, become the umpire. There may come a time when sharing our perspective on their conflict can help, but it's not the time for that at the beginning, and often someone else should handle that part anyway. In the early moments of a struggle, we need to let hurting people get their bleeding stopped or their emotions under control, rather than step into a conflict that may not ever be solved, certainly not in the first moments. And one more idea. Offer connection more than our conviction. See, as helpful and noble as our foundational principles may be, save them for another time, even if you feel the person you're working with has been significantly wrong. You see, first responding doesn't need to be scary. When we're needed intentionally or by chance, our first job is simply to be there. Our presence is one of the greatest presents we can give a hurting person. And it's when we don't leave them emotionally stranded that we provide understanding, a listening ear, and a safe place to ponder getting whole again, even when they've experienced the worst. That's not so hard, is it? When my mother-in-law was given a special dessert to try and then asked, "How do you like it?" she would almost always say, "It tastes like more." I know that when I spend even a little time just being there for someone, I'm always open to experience that again. In fact, some of you have heard one of my favorite quotes that was actually said on a medical TV drama. Today wasn't the kind of day we hope for, but it's the kind of day we live for. So live a little, will you? Talk to you next time.